Hey guys, how's it going? So far we have used curl to access our microservice, but today we will see that there is an API in Jakarta REST, aka JAX-RS also, which we can use to write clients in the Java language. Using curl like we did in the past certainly is a way to test drive our application. If you remember, we always had to give the URL a parameter with some data, tell it that we want JSON instead of HTML, and we received a message like this one. So this can be done certainly, but maybe you want to write clients that test drive your code in Java, for example, because you want to write an integration test. Also, there could be the case that you really have to write an actual client application like a CLI tool in Java language, and you want to use Jakarta REST to access your server. And let's see how easily this can be done. In fact, we have already everything in place that we need to write a client, because right from the start of this project I already included the dependencies needed. First of all, there is no special dependency for Jakarta REST itself. When it comes to the client side, it's all contained in the soul or in the server side if you want. But inside of a product, it could happen that actually you need a dependency, and I already have this one here for Jersey, which is the Jersey client. Let's see if REST Easy also has such a special thing, and we find this one here, the REST Easy client dependency. So also the REST Easy product has a separation into client and server code. So you need this one, and always remember, you only need it for runtime, because at development time, unless you execute that code, you don't need to have this on the class path. It's enough to have the Jakarta REST API on the class path. So let's see inside our client code, what are we doing? First of all, in this demo, we are writing a really micro client just for demonstrating the API. It's a replacement for what curl does. So we have a hello client class, and we have the usual bootstrapping class main. And now we see that in this first line, we create something called client builder dot new client. And what this does is it creates the client component that you need to talk to any RESTful server in a single shot. Certainly, we could go a longer way and create a client builder first and configure the client builder, like giving a URL or something like that, and after that creating the new client. But for now, let's go the short way. The next line we do, and this has nothing to do with JAX-RS, this has to do with what our demo code is doing. We're checking if there are arguments given, and if there is a first argument given, then we are using it as the host name. If not, we use the default localhost. We do the same with the second argument here. We parse it as an integer and use it as the port of the address. If not given, we stick with 8080. And then there is a bit more JAX-RS. We're using the URI builder new instance method to create a URI builder object. This is very nice because we don't have to glue together strings and numbers to build a URL that could fail. We could do typos. And the URI builder is able to always create the correct URL syntax. So we just have to provide the data by giving the scheme, which is HTTP, the host, which is taken from this variable, the port, which is given from this variable. Certainly we could give more. I will stop here. I will not give a path, and we will see in short why. And then we go on with the next command. And this is that we call client.target to create one more object from the URI. So you might wonder what that is doing. Actually, the result of this method is an object of the type web target. So what this line is, it uses the URI we created from the URI builder. And as you can see, by the way, you don't even have to call build. You can directly pass the URI builder itself, which is nice because it spares one line. And this object it creates is part of the client. So it's prepared. It already did some things internally. It needs to talk to that URI, and we can reuse it. So we spare the parsing of the URI, right? So this line actually, you could imagine like parse that URI, check if you have everything you need in place to potentially call the web target. So here in root we have a web target, which is a reflection of this URI. And now comes the place where we are using the path. So we are using that web target and tell that web target we want to create another web target, like a child of that node. So you can think of web targets like being nodes in a hierarchy, and the sense of that is that you can always reuse the work already done. So here we create a new web target by starting by the root and attaching a path of hello world. And again, you cannot make the syntax wrong because it already has the logic inside to check that. And we will get back a web target pointing to the exact URL of the first level of the path, which is the word hello. If you don't remember the actual URL, so we are right here at the moment of building the URL. The next step is that we attach world. So certainly we could do this one. That would be perfectly fine, but again, we could do typos. For example, Windows users often do the typo here, and then they recognize, oh yes, it's Java, I have to do 2 backslashes, and they end up with this. So certainly this is wrong. So this is one kind of typo that this syntax prevents. So that's the reason why we are using the builders and why we are using the API of the web target. The question is, why not going with the builder here? It's just to demonstrate you the possibilities you have, right? Certainly, in a static world, we could go here and give the path here, like hello world, for example. That's perfectly fine, but it's a difference. What we get back is a URI still, so it's something that has to get parsed, and here we get back the web targets. From my understanding, that I would go with the URI builder when it comes to building URIs, and I would go with this API when it comes to going a route from the actual target I have. And now, for example, I get data back from an earlier call, from an earlier request. I take the data from a response and put it here. So technically, it's not a big difference. It's more like a semantic difference. So let's go on. So we have this web target here, and we give it the final path, which is greetings, and we attach more to it. In our case, as you can see here on the command line, we have to provide a query parameter, and we will do this by .query param greetings, and here is the value. Certainly the value can be a variable, but In this small example, I don't want to make it more complex than actually needed. By the way, certainly it already is too complex. I could just go here, as I said, you could go with greetings and so on in a single line. So you can have the query parameter here, right? So I know you understand that. I just go in single steps to make you understand you can have these single steps if needed. So certainly I don't need it here. So what comes in the end is the value, and we get a web target again. And the web target now is used to build a request from it. So what's the difference between a web target and a greeting and a request? The difference is simple. A web target is something that like the URI itself. It's part of the client. It's pre-parsed URI that you can reuse a lot of time in an unchanged way. A request is a thing you use once. So you want to execute a request, so you have to build something internally. For example, you have to say, okay, I have this web target and I want to execute a particular method like get, and that get shall return JSON but not HTML. This is what we did here. So this is not part of the web target. This is part of what I want to do with the web target. So a request object is what you want to wraps what you want to do with the web target. So in the first step, we provide the type of data we want to get back, and there is not much more. So now we have a prepared request. Certainly we could use more configuration with the request, but in our example there is not more, so I leave it out. And with the request I'm going into the next line, which says get. So get is actually executing the request. It provides the method name, which is get, and it executes the request against the server, and it does a bit more. I'm telling the code, I'm telling JAX-RS that I want to get back not a string or stream or whatever. I want to get back a greeting. And this is very nice. I actually have a final greeting here. So if you remember, greeting is a record, right? So it actually is able to parse the JSON that we were responded into a record. So this is pretty nice, because in the next line I want to access parts of this record, actually the message we were receiving from the server, to print it on screen. So let's do this, and you will see this is quite easy, and you know a lot of lines here, which is the same that the server did. It's setting up CDI, for example, so it has to do something in the background, and when that's done you receive the actual message. And this startup code, so first, this is great, isn't it? Right. But this startup code is some kind of slow, actually. If you compare it to doing HTML on your own or using a pure HTML framework, then certainly this is slower. And the reason is that it is doing a lot in the background that other frameworks don't do, like setting up CDI, for example. So you can optimize this. Watch my older videos on optimizing CDI bootstrapping, and certainly the products themselves, like Jersey or REST Easy, have options that you can set to leave out steps of that initialization code to speed this up. I deliberately do not show you this code right now, because this video just shall show you how you can use the Jakarta REST Client API. And as I said, certainly everything of that could be done much easier. I deliberately use a lot of lines to show you several ways that you can do. And one point why you can do that is that you want to execute this request a lot of times. So what we could do is that we reuse that existing code. So there is a way to not do this in a single step. We could do that in several steps by calling other methods, but this is out of scope of this tutorial. Just go into the Java docs. You could find that there is not only a post method or a delete method, but you could also say, I want to dynamically provide the method name using a variable. So it could be much more complex like this, but it could also be much more easier than this. And an easier code you will find in the next volume of this video series. So far for today, I hope you liked this video as much as I did. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and become my supporter by donating some euros using GitHub. As always, stay safe and party on.